I'm Rebecca Tolin. I am a mind-body coach who helps people recover from chronic fatigue, chronic pain, and other stress-related symptoms caused by the brain and nervous system. I'm excited today to speak with a woman who recovered from post-COVID symptoms. There are thousands of people with long COVID who don't have any lasting tissue damage. So once physicians have ruled out things like heart damage or lung damage, we really look to the mind-body connection. I had very similar symptoms with chronic fatigue syndrome or CFS-ME. When I was a reporter in my early 30s, I was going through a really stressful experience. I caught a virus and essentially my whole system crashed. I became so exhausted and weak, I could hardly leave the house. The brain fog was so bad, I couldn't even remember the name of close friends or colleagues. There was a lot of body pain, digestive issues, insomnia, lightheadedness when I would stand. And this began an exasperating 13-year healing journey in which I was looking for a cure. I went to allopathic doctors, acupuncturists, healers, psychotherapists. Nothing really moved the needle at all. I would notice, though, that meditation and gentle yoga would relax me and I would feel a little bit better. But I was still pretty stuck. I wasn't able to work. I had lost a career that I loved. And I was just going on like that in this plateau until I met a woman who recovered from CFS-ME, and she told me her story and how she recovered, and I actually had a breakthrough, and I made a complete recovery. So this body of work she told me about came from Dr. John Sarno, who was a physician at New York University. He coined the term TMS, or Tension Myositis Syndrome. And then another physician who had studied with Dr. Sarno named Howard Schubiner, who wrote the book Unlearn Your Pain. And I really dove into their work. And what I learned was it wasn't that ongoing viruses suppressing my immune system were causing the symptoms. It was really the way my brain and nervous system were processing stress and repressing emotion. And so I was able to recover by retraining my brain, by learning to feel these emotions that I had really shut down before, by calming my nervous system with somatic meditations, and really re-engaging with life on my own terms. So today I'm excited to speak with Sarah Rainwater from Seattle, Washington, because she recovered from post-COVID symptoms through a really similar approach. Sarah, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for asking me.
Yeah. So I first just want to go into COVID a little bit because you caught the acute virus back in November of
November,
2020.
mid-November. Yep.
So what were your symptoms and what was that like?
Very typical symptoms, just like you would read on the CDC website. Started with fever, nausea, body ache, fatigue, uh, trouble concentrating, and it lasted 10 days. We did have a loss. And when I say we, my husband and I, my kids got it too. My son is 2, and I don't really know. He didn't have as many symptoms, but we did have a loss of taste and smell for a period of time as well.
Yeah. So it sounds like that was really stressful for your whole family at
It
that
was
time.
very stressful. And what was stressful about it is that our family members, our older family members, the ones at high risk, were taking care of our kids. And we knew that they were putting themselves at risk. It was kind of okay. It was accepted, like, this is what we're going to do because our kids were not in school and we had to work, particularly my mother-in-law, who had taken care of our kids the day that we had found out that we tested positive for COVID.
Yeah. Okay. I can just imagine how scary that was. And there was so much collective fear at that time. But the symptoms passed, right? So you
Yep.
got better from the acute COVID.
Yep.
And then what happened in December? So let's fast forward a month or two when you started getting these sort of post-COVID symptoms.
So it was around the holiday season. I was pretty amped up anyways, just because I had a lot to take care of with the family. As my adrenaline was going up, I was having trouble sleeping, but not enough to really even think about it too much. I also had a chronic cough. I get chronic coughs often after I get sick. And a family member had said, hey, have you been checked out by a doctor? A lot of people are having post-COVID symptoms. You might want to get that checked out. I went and saw a naturopath to try some home remedies for my cough. Eventually, symptoms started to rise. I thought I had like acid reflux. Maybe I did. I saw my primary care physician just for some acid reflux medication, but my chest still kind of hurt. I also had some weird sweating events at night. So like my body temperature was really off. I had some cramping and some heart palpitations. What I now know could be described as POTS, P-O-T-S. I did not know that that was a thing until I had these symptoms and looked that up. And then I continued to see my doctor. And then she had prescribed anxiety medication. I've never been on anxiety medication, but I could not sleep. And so this was supposed to help me to sleep. And then I took even a stronger sleeping medication, and it just was not working.
Oh, it is so hard when we can't sleep. I completely get that. And it sounds like the stress was rising, the symptoms were rising. At one point, you even drove yourself to the hospital to get checked.
Yeah, so it was another night of no sleep, which was very fearful. I've never had sleeping problems. And so it was at 3 a.m. and I thought, you know what, I better go now because I have to take care of my family in the morning. I left my kids at home with my husband and I drove myself to the hospital. Everything checked out fine. My blood work came back and everything was normal.
Wow. So at that point, then what did you think was going on? Now, I just want to also give the background that you have some experience with mind body symptoms. So what happened in your mind when you realized there's no tissue damage from COVID?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, I had debilitating migraines. I've had headaches all my life, but when I first started teaching, which was a very stressful thing for me, I had just unbearable migraines. I was at my friend's house and she had the Seattle Met open on her coffee table. And there was an article written by Catherine Robinson on her experiencing healing back pain with Dr. Sarno's work. And just something about this screamed to me, I gotta check out this book. And since then I've read and reread Dr. Sarno's work over and over again, along with Schubiner. And slowly but surely my migraines went away and I have no headaches or migraines today. I used it for other ailments like plantar fasciitis, hip pain, and other things as well. And so it took me a decade and just really just interest in Dr. Sarno's research to really I just believe so much in his work because I had been studying it for so long. I went on a Facebook group of other people who know about Dr. Sarno and just asked the question, do you think that people who are struggling with some symptoms post-COVID, particularly POTS, are it's a TMS related situation. And of course, many people said, yes, if there's no tissue damage, this is very similar to what people experience like you who are overcoming CFS. And that's when I started to dive in again to Dr. Sarno's research and to do all my practices at that point.
Yeah, it's because you had that background with Sarno's work and you had already recovered from the migraines. I think it was probably easier for you to get. And I do see it as really similar to what I had with CFSME and people with these post-viral symptoms. It's just once the virus passes and there's all this stress and pressure in our nervous system, we can essentially like learn those symptoms. There's these learned neural pathways in the brain that become entrenched. So in your case, once you sort of made that connection, like, okay, this is TMS, this is mind-body syndrome or neural pathway symptoms, then how did you approach the post-COVID?
Yeah, I do just want to say that for people overcoming post-COVID symptoms, I mean, they have two kind of things to hurdles to overcome. One is you have to understand the paradigm of Dr. Sarno's work and really believe that. For me, I had already had that, and I feel so fortunate to have known about the mind-body methods. And then the other thing that's really scary with COVID is that no one knows very much about it. I was just recently listening to a podcast by an expert in the same field, and they were saying uncertainty for our brain is actually scarier than catastrophizing. And I think that it's easy for people who are having some weird sensations in their body post-COVID or anything post-viral that they're going to catastrophize. And again, because we don't know much about COVID, it's easy to do that. So I really had to not research about the possibilities of what COVID could be doing to my body. And I had to dive in and believe that my body was healed, that I am okay, just like you, I can recover, and the TMS strategies will work.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, and what I want to also point out is all the different emotional, psychological, and mental stress that you were describing along the way. Like in December, you had all the stress around the holidays. Then this relative or somebody planted the seed, oh, maybe it's long COVID. So that's more stress. And as you're saying, uncertainty to the brain and nervous system. And that alone perpetuates symptoms, puts us in that flight, fight, freeze mode. And then we go down these rabbit holes of trying to chase the symptoms, but it's really more coming back into realizing the way our thoughts and emotions drive these symptoms. And I love that you were able to really make that pivot pretty quickly because you had experience with it. So once you started saying, I'm okay, I'm safe, what were some of your other strategies and approaches to really recover from the post-COVID symptoms?
Yeah, for my migraines, it was very much believing in the research. The awesome thing is that I had already done that. So then after that, journaling, somatic tracking, meditating, and listening to recovery stories, and really just diving into the stories and the research of mind body medicine to believe that my body is safe. The thing, it is kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy in a way, because you're talking to your brain and your body and you're saying, actually, your body's okay. There's nothing structural or wrong with you. You need to like lean into these feelings and tell your brain that you're safe. It's brain retraining, and it's all based on neuroplasticity. And so what I found with my migraines, and also with these symptoms, with this POTS symptoms post-COVID, is that I had to do a lot of work at the beginning, and then as the symptoms dissipate, to continue the work a little bit, because it's just life-changing, and it's actually stuff that really benefits my life anyways, and that I want to continue to do to maintain health.
Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit more about what that looked like, journaling, because it's a specific kind of journaling, right? Like about your emotions.
Yeah.
And then I'll ask you about a couple of the other things.
Journaling with TMS is not really journaling. I would say it's more expressive writing. And so what Dr. Sarno would say, and Schubiner, is that we have repressed emotions. Anger and fear are huge ones. Oh, and a feeling of unsafe, like not being safe. And you have to, for my day, for post-COVID, I would have to journal daily. I don't journal daily anymore. I do it regularly, but not that much. I would talk about my day and all of things that were making me feel scared and fearful. I know this sounds totally trite. This is not trite. This is brain retraining, because the emotions fire off your amygdala, which fires off your fight or flight response, which change your body chemistry. And so you have to actually, via emotions, retrain your brain.
Yes, so beautifully put. I love that, because it's really about, one of the pieces is expressing the emotions, realizing that the fear, the anger, the frustration, all these emotions beneath the surface actually shift the brain and nervous system. And like you said, create biochemical reactions in the body. So something else that I did a lot of, and I know you did some of too, is what in this field we call somatic tracking. So I'll just describe it briefly, that it's really feeling sensations in the body. So for me, there was a lot of fatigue. So it was really just like feeling the heaviness, feeling the dullness, or even sometimes I'd have buzzing, which is kind of that fear response, through a lens of safety, by reminding myself, I'm safe and okay. These are just sensations. And we grow new neural networks that way and increase the capacity in our prefrontal lobe. That was a really big part of my healing, those kind of somatic meditations. What was it like for you?
Yeah, for me, for the post-COVID symptoms, I was at the time changing the semesters in my classroom, and I was creating a bunch of resource packets for my students. So I thankfully had a little bit of time to listen to a lot of recovery stories and do a lot of that somatic practice. One very simple thing, and actually Dr. Sarno says, funny enough, Dr. Sarno actually is like, I don't know why some of this stuff is working, but now we know with brain imaging, like why it's working, that this is like total neurobiology. But at the time he's like, just talk to your body, talk to your brain. And so now I actually know that it's my amygdala. And I was talking to my amygdala in the classroom while I was just preparing some stuff for my students. And I even had to say out loud, I think I even locked the door so no one could come in. And I said, amygdala, you are safe. You're okay. You're going to be fine. The virus is out of your body. You can be calm now. Everything's going to be okay with your I even had to say, like, with your children and your family, you're safe. And I had to do that over and over and over again. And eventually you retrain your brain. It's neuroplastic and it works. Oh, also, yeah. So talking to my amygdala, but yes, also feeling the feelings in my body. And that's just a practice that I've had for the last decade. Anyways, with migraines, like, oh man, I am really getting a hip pain today, but I just got off the call with somebody and it was a very stressful phone call. And so, hey, pain, how's it going? It sounds so funny again, very trite, but hey, pain, how's it going? You're okay. You don't need to repress that. You can let it go. It's okay to feel that feeling and you're safe.
Absolutely. Those of us on this path talk to ourselves a lot. And it really is like, I think of it as kind of being the adult in the room that's talking to a scared part of me, just like you would comfort a child that's really scared and that's reactive and feeling fearful. And so we just need like that consistent, confident language to say we're safe and okay. And really, once you rule out pathological issues, one thing I learned from Dr. Howard Schubiner, he has a set of criteria how you rule in mind-body symptoms. You first want to rule out, things like an active infection or tumors or broken bones or things. And when you don't have those things, you can rule in mind-body symptoms because they often shift and change and may get worse with stress and they behave in certain ways. And then, like you did, you kind of own, okay, this is mind body, and are the one who comforts yourself. And I'm actually curious how you did that. So when you were still going through the post-COVID symptoms, what comes up for a lot of people is they're really exhausted or dizzy and they don't know how much to kind of push through that, because there's something about this work we do want to keep engaging in our life. We don't want to succumb to the symptoms in fear. But there are times the symptoms are really strong. So how did you do that? You're a school teacher, you're a parent. How did you navigate that in this post-COVID period?
Ooh, yeah. And the hard part is it makes the symptoms even worse because now you're getting so stressed out that you can't take care of your kids or your classroom. Luckily, we were online teaching, so I could sit down because I don't think I would have had the ability to walk around a classroom. Oh, gosh, on one end, people who struggle with these mind-body symptoms have to change their life a little bit and allow themselves to take a break, because there are oftentimes people who push themselves, and Dr. Sarno talks about this, themselves a little bit too hard, which is aggravating for the unconscious mind, and of course triggers off all these things in the amygdala of not being safe. So I've had to change my life a lot to be like a cool, calm, have space for myself. But that's not to say because I'm in pain. That's just because I need to do that. Now I've learned to do that. On the other end, you can't let the symptoms change your life. You have to keep going you have to tell your body that you're okay. These symptoms, they're coming from a different source than you think that they're coming from. The virus is not going to destroy your body, and actually your body is fine. So a part of that cognitive behavioral experience is to actually get up and do that thing so that you're telling your brain it's okay and you're safe and you're retraining those neural pathways. So you kind of have to push a little bit So you're telling your brain you're safe in that moment, and it's okay to go teach. It's okay to go walk around a classroom, and you're not going to fall or perish. But at the same time, when I get home, I need to drink some tea. I need to stop working at a certain point. I could grade papers all night long, but I can't do that to my body. So there's a balance there.
Yeah, I'm so glad you described that, Sarah, because I think a lot of people connect with Dr. Sarno's books. They read them and they say, oh, that's like my biography because I'm perfectionistic, hard driving, conscientious, people pleasing, holding my emotions. A lot of these kind of personality traits can lead to mind body symptoms. So, on the one hand, we want to really learn how to be kinder and more compassionate with ourselves. And that distinction that you made is not kind of let the symptoms bully or scare us and do the things we really want and need to do, as opposed to the things we're doing just because we're used to being in this kind of frantic mode of activity. And that kind of leads me to the next question I wanted to ask you about, because I've really found with this work, all you really want is to get rid of the symptoms. But then as you start doing this work, you realize there are so many other benefits. It's like coming home to yourself, your whole
Yes.
self, learning to take care of yourself, listen to your body more. What would you say some of the other benefits have been for you?
So many. I think one, I changed my relationship in my head. I don't think it maybe looked different to family members, but I changed my relationship with who I am and how I act with certain family members, um, because of certain triggers that would do to my perfectionism and trying to prove myself. I
Mm.
also had to work a lot on perfectionism and shame, like shame that goes along with perfectionism. And I know that this sounds really like, what does this have to do with physical sensations? But if you read Dr. Sarno and Dr. Schubiner's work, you'll understand. And so then I had to actually, my new mantra became mediocrity is awesome. Like it's okay to be mediocre. There is time, like, oh, another mantra of mine became progress, not perfection. So if I have a whole checklist of things I want to get done, did I do one little thing on that today that was, and then really applaud myself? And I have to create that, almost that new neural pathway. It's not perfect. I didn't get everything done on my checklist, but I did one tiny little thing. Now that can be celebrated. I do certain stuff, like I set timers when I'm cleaning the house, because I just can go overboard with making everything really perfect. So that has been kind of like that really was my migraine, coming of self and my self-discovery through this whole process, and absolutely life-changing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love the insights that come, and they're different for each person. I feel like they're whatever we need. And part of what brought us into the symptoms will bring us out of it, right? So if there's a tendency to worry a lot or push and drive ourselves, it's kind of backing off, relaxing, realize we're safe and okay in the moment.
Yeah.
I love your mantras. And
Thanks.
so I want to just kind of close with asking, looking through the lens of people that have long COVID and they're going to all these different doctors and practitioners. And frankly, I feel like they're being told some similar things that I was told with CFSME, which is like, well, we think viruses are still suppressing your immune system, or there's something wrong with your mitochondria, or it's a genetic predisposition. And for me, I realized maybe those things were true, but they weren't perpetuating the symptoms, and I could heal anyway. And I did recover anyway. So they weren't the root cause. They were kind of ancillary findings, people who are trying to help but don't really know. And so yeah, people with long COVID are going in all these different directions, so understandably. So as someone who's been through this and has recovered from different mind body symptoms, including post COVID, what would you say to them?
I was looking at a lot of different programs when I was trying to kind of reinvigorate my learnings of Dr. Sarno, because nowadays there's awesome programs like yours that people can learn from. 10 years ago, I was reading reviews on Dr. Sarno's Amazon book uh, list, just to get some community around this, and now there is community. And so what's really cool is that I could actually call these different programs, and one in particular had a lot to do with like mind body, but also eating, and also like exercise and being and like resting. And I think that all that's really great. It probably does make you feel better, but it's not going to change your brain chemistry. And I think sometimes the more people try those, there was one long COVID Facebook group that was about drinking this particular kind of smoothie and that was going to heal them. That is still obsessing about the physicality of everything. And that is not retraining your brain. It's just creating more fear. And so I think we have to look at science with this. And we look, and I think that's what I would say to people with long COVID. I was just listening to an expert interview the other day by a prominent doctor, and he said, mind body stuff, all this mind body methodology is no longer up for debate. It's a real shame that primary care physicians are not screening for chronic illnesses with no structural damage for like a neuroplastic, like a circuit. There's all the different names for it, but TMS basically.
Absolutely. What's so interesting is there is a lot of science now that shows the connection between stress, our nervous system, and our symptoms, as well as studies that show adverse childhood experiences cause more chronic pain later in life. But not many physicians are really trained in this yet. So it's something, fortunately, we can immerse ourselves in through Sarno's work, Schubiner's work. And like you say, now there's so much else out there. Yeah. And so, Sarah, would you say how are you feeling now?
I'm feeling really good. Yes.
Great.
Yeah. And also just a renewed sense of like purpose which is why I wanted to do this video with you today, of really getting the word out there about Sarno and Schubiner's work from this whole experience. So going back to what you said, I'm almost glad it happened to me, because now I can be really passionate going forward about this work.
Yeah. And, I think it's really important, something you said, I would just want to go back to, when people are running around, and I know what it's like to think this is the smoothie, this is the diet, this is the herb or the supplement, but that uncertainty actually scares our brain and nervous system. And the difference with Sarno and Schubiner and this type of mind-body work is they're actually saying we do know the cause. We don't have to try all these different things not knowing the cause. We do know the cause. And it's really then practicing these techniques that just bring so much more meaning, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, Sarah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Thanks for asking me. I really appreciate you and what all you have done, and your story that you've shared as well.
Well, so you can hear that there are so many different symptoms that are caused by the brain and nervous system. If you want to learn more about this approach, I have lots of free resources on my website at RebeccaTolin.com.